Okay, Emma, so we just want to start by asking you simply what was your experience like for you? What was it like to be in the ICU for, especially for the amount of time that you were in there for?
Yeah, sure. So I might start with just sharing a little bit of the story of why I was in the ICU
Yeah.
and what that was like. So I, on May the 2nd, 2009, I was in Cairns on a holiday for my husband's brother's wedding. And I received a call that night from my mum, basically saying, I could get a little bit emotional here, that my little brother had been involved in a car accident. And she basically said that they didn't know much at that time, but that my brother's best friend had called to say that it was quite severe, and there were 7 boys in the car, piled into the car, and that Tim had been rushed to the ICU in Toowoomba, because that's where they were living at the time. And basically that phone call started a sequence of phone calls that night while I was in Cairns, thinking, what is going on? Should I fly back to Brisbane and get to Toowoomba? What should I do? And basically, bit by bit, we heard more and more of the story unfold. And I think the next phone call was my mum calling to say that one of Tim's friends had passed away in the accident. Sorry. And then on to say that Tim had been put into an induced coma and was likely to be taken to the PA hospital for further treatment and with suspected brain injury. So yeah, you can imagine that the trip home from Cairns was probably the longest trip of my life, just playing over everything in my head and what's going on. And I was probably particularly sensitive because I at the time was working as an occupational therapist at PA hospital in brain injury, and so all this stuff started happening of what's going to happen and what could be the outcome, and oh my gosh, what if Tim does have a severe brain injury, and how's all this going to look? And so yeah, basically my husband and I flew back, and I guess as soon as we came into Brisbane, there began the ICU journey and the hospital journey for us in general. So Tim basically ended up having a severe brain injury. He spent 4 weeks in ICU fighting for his life. And it was really hard, and I still remember first time going to see him, and quite blessed that he was quite similar to, he didn't have much marks on his face and everything, but just seeing all of the tubes in his body and keeping him alive. You can't fathom what it is like to see someone that you love fighting for their life and to not know what's going to happen next. And so it was long for us. Tim spent 4 weeks in ICU, and there were a number of occasions where the doctors were sure that he was going to lose his life. But he didn't, praise God. Lots of prayers, I think. And lots of love and support. And I guess, as a family going up day by day, it was long and it was hard, and I guess ICU was only really the beginning for us. So as I said, Tim spent 4 weeks in ICU, and then spent 8 months, I think it was, in the neurosurgical acute ward, so getting more intense treatment for his brain injury, and then another 9 months in brain injury rehabilitation, all at the PA hospital. And so it was a massive life change for my family. My family were living in Toowoomba, and all of a sudden, all living in Brisbane in this tiny 2-bedroom unit that my sister and I were sharing at the time. My sister and I were all of a sudden sharing a bed, and Mum and Dad were in her bedroom, and you know, it's this everyday life of going to the hospital and getting home exhausted, and then you're in each other's space, and just the grief of it all and what's going to happen. And that went on for months and months, you know, living together, and just that ongoing journey of dealing with it. Yeah, and so it was definitely the hardest time of all of our life. I can't, and it's still hard. Tim now is in a wheelchair. He can walk a little bit with help, but it's hard. And he can't talk. He can communicate a little bit with words, but not too much. And so, yeah, I guess ICU was kind of just the beginning of a long journey, and it often is for families like ours, and for multiple families. And sometimes it can be the end of a journey for some people, and we saw a lot of that in there. A lot of families where they lost the ones they love, and I particularly recall one family who had a young daughter who was similar to Tim's age, about 16, and she'd had a heart condition for a lot of her life, and they'd been in and out of hospital, in and out, and she'd done really well, and she basically reached the end of her life in the time that we were there. And just to see this family, they really didn't have much support at all. They had no one around, and we just had visitors come up constantly, friends and family, and we were so blessed as a family, but this family had no one. And they would just be up there day in, day out, just there with this beautiful girl. And yeah, for a lot of families, this is their life and their experience, and often they are alone in this.
Yeah, absolutely. So you're talking about the support and love that your family had from various people. What was the way you would say, if any, the way that you felt most loved and supported during that time?
Yeah. Look, it's tough. I think some people often don't know how to support people in this situation, and it can be really tricky. To be honest, the biggest thing, and all of my family says this, the biggest help for us was actually meals. I think the last thing you feel like doing when you come home from being at hospital all day, drained, exhausted, and you don't feel like cooking a meal, you don't feel like going grocery shopping, you don't even feel like looking after yourself, to be honest. You're exhausted, but to have a healthy home cooked meal there that you can grab out of the freezer and just quickly heat up, that was massive for us. But also just, you know, friends who I knew were there. I think the big thing is you always don't know, should I go, should I visit, should I not? You know, even if it was just a simple text message, I'm thinking of you, or, you know, if you want me to visit, if you want me to take you out, and then the person can kind of say what they're feeling, if they want you to take them out or not. But I appreciated those things as well. We had a lot of family and a lot of friends just coming, and you know, similar to what we're doing tonight, similar to, they would just bring some snacks or something for us, because when you're in that ICU room, you don't really want to have to think about going out and getting lunch, you know. And so if you've got something simple there, a snack to just get you through, tie you through until you get home to have a meal that night, that sometimes you don't think it would make a big difference, but to have just something there, and not even to have it there to eat, you know, that's helpful to have something there to eat, that's great. But to think, this person thought enough of me to bring something, or this person thought enough of me to show that they care. And yeah, that was important for us.
Yeah, so you kind of touched on it there, and I guess the question is, tonight we're making packs, we're trying to make just even the smallest bit of impact in these people who are suffering, and as you've shared what that was like for your family, and just trying to make even the smallest amount of difference in this time in people's lives. It's a very vulnerable time in people's lives. So what would have receiving a pack have meant to you or other families that you shared the journey with maybe during this time?
Yeah. Look, I think, as I said, my family was so supported, and I think, so receiving a pack for us, for me, I think I would have thought, who would have thought to do this? Like, how blessed do I feel that someone is thinking of me, that someone has in their own world, whatever's going on for them, thought enough to do something special for us. But I think particularly for some of those other families that aren't supported, that don't have people around them, calling them, texting them, supporting them, to think somebody cared, like, and somebody's out there caring about me now. I don't know who it is, but somebody's caring about me. Yeah, I don't think you can imagine what it would be like for a family to be sitting there in the ICU hour after hour and have someone come up and hand them a pack, like, to be like, wow, like, somebody has gone and got me some chocolate or whatever, you know, like, that's really thoughtful and really special, and hopefully that's what these people experience in us doing this. Yeah, and I think one thing that I wanted to share as well is that some of these packs will, when we spoke with the PA volunteers, they said that they might actually hand some of them on as well to the long stay brain injury rehabilitation unit and spinal injury rehabilitation unit families. So these are families like mine who've been there, you know, maybe in the hospital for 18 months, 2 years, and so it's day in, day out, and it can be exhausting and draining and feel like, when is this ever going to end? And sometimes in that acute phase in ICU, people are there, you know, people want to support, but often it's 18 months down the track, 2 years down the track, right, 3 years down the track, that people, you know, they're busy and they've gone on with their own life, and for these families to think somebody cares now and to get something to keep them going, I think would make a huge difference. You know, these are families that they're going through this, they're there for the long haul, and they can be so exhausted. And I recall one particular gentleman whose wife, when she was in the brain injury rehab unit with Tim, she'd had a stroke, quite a severe stroke, which had left her in a wheelchair. And he had 2 little kids to look after at home. He was working full time because he had to continue to pay the mortgage. He had his wife coming home on the weekends for visits, so he's looking after her, doing the work during the week, looking after the kids. And I remember my mum saying something to him like, you know, someone gave us a meal, and he was like, oh my God, I would die for somebody to give me a meal. And, you know, I often think about him, and you know, maybe this pack isn't a meal. We couldn't do meals tonight because of workplace health and safety and those issues. But to have him get something and think somebody cares about where I'm at now, and somebody cares that this is a hard time for me. But also, I guess I'd say tonight, not run off to the ICU at the PA or to the brain injury unit at the PA and find this person. You can do that if you want to. But to see these people in our everyday life, I guess that's what Imagine is about. You know, that's what we are all about, is opening our eyes to see these people that need us, you know, like there are so many hurting people in this world who just need someone to reach out to them and show them love, and show them the love of God that we have to give to them.
Amen. Well, thank you so much, Em, for sharing with us today. It really helps us, like you're saying, it helps us to open our eyes, to give that insight into other people's world and their experience. So I know this is something very close to your heart, and as you said, ongoing. So we want to assure you of our prayers for both Tim and for your family as well, ongoing. And so we join in praying for the other people that these packages will go to, and people that are in this situation in every day. As you said, just one aspect of the many places that this world needs, you know, a touch of love and people to reach out a hand. So thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing with us your story today.
Thanks, Renee.